What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Talking About Baseball. Today, I will be doing my right field rankings for the 2024 season. We are so close to the end of this series, and thank you all so much for the support on this series. This is the biggest video series I've done in my entire YouTube career, which, so to speak, is not very long. But anyway, this is still really exciting for me as I've done much better. Last year, I only got through 4 videos after quitting because my editing software completely crashed. And also, on those 4 videos, I got a combined less than 10 views. Every single one of these videos has gotten so much more than 10 views. And like I said, I thank you all for your support. And thank you so much, as we have almost gotten 100 subscribers in a month after it taking me 2 years to get 100 on Thanksgiving. And I just want to really voice that I'm so thankful for all of you, and thank you so much. But anyway, let's get into it at number 31, and that will be Hunter Goodman of the... To start off this list, if you've watched any of the other videos, it's usually players who really aren't that good, and he is unfortunately one of them. He didn't really play all that much last year, so it's a very small sample size, and I do think he can be much better in the future, but his bat looked fine last year, and his defense and cores just didn't look all that great. But he joins an outfield with really solid defense and like Nolan Jones and Brenton Doyle, so I don't really think he'll have to do all that much for them. Although it is a spacious outfield and cores, so he is going to have to do more than other players that have great outfields amongst them. At number 30, I have Oscar Colas of the White Sox. He was a rookie last year and just really did not look all that good. He was signed as a two-way player, which did not end up happening. And hitting-wise, and it's probably a good thing he's not a two-way player, because clearly, even though he only stuck with hitting, he's not really all that good at even one of them. Because he looked terrible last year. His defense looked awful. The only reason he's even above Hunter Goodman, because he definitely played worse than him, is that he definitely, in my opinion, has more potential because he was a top prospect in the White Sox system. But last year he just looked absolutely horrific, and I could say the same thing about the entire White Sox team last season. At number 29, I have Wilyer Abreu for the Red Sox. He only played about the last 2 months of the season for them, but in those last 2 months, he looked outstanding, and that is why, although he looks so outstanding, he's still pretty low because it's just a very small sample size. He only also was carried by a lot of games where he had a grand slam and a super good game where the Red Sox scored almost 20 runs against the Astros. So it's just games like that kind of carry him along, and that's why he's ranked kind of low on this list. At number 28, I have Dominic Canzoni. He was part of a Mariners Diamondbacks deal, which seems like a very common trade partner right now, as they just made the Eugenio Suarez deal this offseason. They made the Paul Sewald deal at the deadline that sent Canzoni to the Mariners, and a lot of other deals that have just happened recently. Canzoni is a really good player in my opinion, and I just don't think he's been able to show it yet because last year was just his rookie season, and he will continue to progress and currently has a starting job in right field for the Mariners, and I do think that he will keep that until opening day because I think there's an outfielder that they're going to replace first, and that is Cade Marlowe, who is ranked very low in a different video, and I think that Canzoni can be a really solid player for the M's. At number 27, I have Ramon Laureano of the Guardians. He is currently projected to be their starter, which I don't really love. He was really solid for the Athletics, but after getting banned for steroids for 80 games, he came back and just looked pretty bad and ended up getting DFA'd. And like I've mentioned before, getting DFA'd by the Athletics is a pretty low spot considering how bad they are, but he got signed by the Guardians at the end of the year and looked fine for them. He has a really solid arm in the outfield, although not really good defense outside of that, and his bat really isn't all that great, but it can be a really solid power bat at times, and he's just a really wishy-washy, inconsistent player. At number 26, I have Nelson Velasquez. He was traded to the Royals from my Chicago Cubs at the deadline and looked really solid for the Royals in the second half. He's only been good for really a second half, though, and ended up hitting a whopping 17 home runs, mostly for the Royals at the very end of the season. And I think if he's able to keep that up for a full season, he will most likely win MVP because that would be probably a 60 home run pace, which, as many of you may know, that is not going to happen. I would be shocked if Nelson Velasquez hit 60 home runs last year, and so would pretty much probably every single person on the world, and that's why it's not going to happen. I do think he can be a really solid player for them, though. Definitely not hit 60 home runs in a season, but maybe 30 in the future. At number 15, I have Mickey Moniak from the Angels. He's coming off of a breakout season where he kind of just completely fell off a cliff at the end of the year. He was really solid in the middle months where the Angels were looking like they could be a playoff contender, and then Trout got injured and Ohtani got injured and he started playing like garbage, and then everything just went completely downhill, and it was just a downward spiral that was absolutely terrible for the Angels, and now I'm done ranting about them. But anyway, I think Moniak, if he could just piece those 2 months together, about 2 months together for a full season, he could be a really solid player. He just hasn't done it yet. At number 24, I have Jesus Sanchez of the Marlins. Jesus Sanchez is a pretty solid player in my opinion. His hitting against right-handed pitchers is really solid, but against left-handers, not really the same. On defense, he's not really all that great, but he's on an up-and-coming Marlins team, and he's also pretty young, and he's in a really young outfield with him, Brian De La Cruz, and Jazz Chisholm. At number 23, I have another guy who's on a very young team, and that is Will Benson of the Reds. He also absolutely crushes right-handed pitching, but he is so monumentally bad against lefties that he doesn't even hit against them at all. He plays pretty solid defense for them, but has really only had 1 year of being good, and even hit his first career home run last year, which was in fact a walk-off against the Dodgers. But like I said, he's on a really young Reds team that I think is going to make a pretty solid playoff run next year. Maybe not a playoff run in the playoffs, but a playoff run to the playoffs. I kind of worded that weird. But anyway, I think he's pretty solid is what I'm trying to say. At number 22, I have Manuel Margot of the Dodgers. After Mookie Betts has reportedly been moved to second base, after the Tyler Glasnow trade, he is now projected to be their starting right fielder. He's a pretty solid guy to have, although he's not really that great at the plate. He'll probably be hitting very low in the Dodgers lineup that is extremely top-heavy. He's still a really solid hitter for them. He's still a really solid defender for them and will be able to play great defense in Mookie Betts' absence. I don't know if he'll be as good as him because Mookie Betts' arm is just insane, and obviously at the plate he isn't the same guy, but they'll still have Mookie Betts. He just will not be playing right. At number 21, I have Seth Brown of the Athletics. He's another one of the few bright spots on the Athletics team, which it's really hard to see bright spots in Oakland. It's very dark there based on how they've been playing. Also kind of worded that weird, but anyway, Seth Brown absolutely mashes right-handed pitchers. He's another guy just like Will Benson and Jesus Sanchez and also Mickey Moniak that just absolutely crushes righties but can't hit lefties. His defense is also really rough, but he's probably the best hitter out of the three that I just mentioned, and that's why he's ranked higher than all of them at number 21. At number 20, I have one of the players that fell off the most last season, and that is Starling Marte of the Mets. He just looked absolutely terrible last year. His hitting completely fell off. His defense has never really been good, but it just continued to get even worse last year. He's getting paid a ton of money by a big Mets contract that they gave him, and now the Mets aren't really looking like that good of a team in general. And now that he's aging a lot and getting older, his speed has pretty much completely diminished, and he's also dealing with a lot more injuries now, and he will continue to fall from 20 if he doesn't rebound slightly next year. At number 19, I have son of Carl Yastrzemski, Mike Yastrzemski. Unfortunately for his grandson, he is not quite as good as Carl, but he's still a pretty solid player because he is in the major leagues. But in the majors, he's just pretty much a mid-player in my opinion. He's another left-handed bat, but he's actually pretty good against righties and lefties, and he's just fine on defense. I would say he's just pretty much slightly above average at everything he does. At number 18, we have the young gun Riley Green. He's a great defensive outfielder, although his hitting definitely still needs some work. He doesn't really have all that much power, and his contact is really good. He's on an up-and-coming Tigers team that I personally think will be winning the division next year, and they are going to look really solid, in my opinion, with young guys like him and Spencer Torkelson in the lineup. At number 17, I have another young guy, and that is Sal Frelick of the Brewers. He got called up for the last 2 or 3 months after they had kind of a weird trade deadline, and he looked really good for them last year and was a big part of their playoff push. He's also another lefty who's really good against righties, once again not so much against lefties, and he's also pretty solid in the field, and he's really fast. I do think that Sal Frelick is a really good center fielder, is a really good right fielder, and will continue to move up this list, but he also has not had a singular full season under his belt yet, and he's already at number 17. At number 16, I have George Springer of the Blue Jays. He's a pretty good hitter now, but later in his career, now that he's pretty much being overpaid at this point, he's definitely getting older and everything's kind of going downhill. His hitting has just been progressively getting worse and worse and worse, and his defense has also never really been that good and is doing the same thing. He got moved from center to right field now, and he just hasn't really looked very good in right either. His hitting, like I said, is still pretty solid, and he had a couple good months last year. I think he will have a career resurgence here in the next few years, but he just has not looked very good at the back end of this Blue Jays contract now. At number 15, I have Jordan Walker from the Cardinals. I think he's poised to have a big breakout season after a really solid rookie year last year. He wasn't really amazing last year, but his defense is definitely his number one concern right now, as he looked pretty terrible in right field and third base last year. Although his hitting was amazing for the entire season, and that's the big part that I would highlight for him here. I think that he can be really good for a Cardinals team that might be good, might be bad. I don't really know, because I thought they would be great last year and they were terrible, and I'm kind of mixed feelings with them this year. At number 14, I have Max Kepler from the Twins. He's also coming off of one of the best seasons in his career. He finally got better at hitting against lefties as a left-handed hitter, and his defense has always been really solid in right field for the Twins, and he was a big part of their playoff push last year. Sounds like I'm kind of saying the exact same thing that I said about Sal Frelick, but the main reason that Max Kepler is higher is he has a lot more experience than guys like Sal Frelick and other guys I've mentioned. But even though this is his first good year, I think he's on a Twins team that could potentially make the playoffs again next year, although I find it less likely than it was for them to make it this year. At number 13, I have Nick Castellanos from the Phillies. They finally figured out how to play him well defensively, because he's only good when he's running into the ball, not back on it. So they just play him super deep and have the rest of their pretty good defensive outfield with Brandon Marsh and Johan Rojas help him out when needed. So he never has to go to his right, only forward and to his left, which is what he's best at. So conveniently, the Phillies and their great minds figured it out. And obviously, he's an absolute monster at the plate. His offense hasn't really been as great as it was in former years, like the 2019 when he was with the Tigers and Cubs and hit a ton of doubles, and the years with the Reds where he just mashed home runs. But he's still been a really solid player for the Phillies, and even though he's getting older, he's not really making a ton of money, although it is a pretty solid amount. And Bryce Harper asking for an extension. And also, this is kind of a weird thing to say, and it's another thing hinting at my predictions video, which, like I mentioned, might be coming out on New Year's Day and maybe even at midnight. It's just really interesting because I have this weird feeling that the Phillies are not going to be all that good next year. At number 12, I have Jack Suwinski from the Pirates. He's another pretty well-rounded guy, except he cannot hit lefties to save his life. A lot of these left-handed hitting outfielders just cannot hit lefties whatsoever, and he's one of them. He mashes right-handed pitching. He's a great defender. He's not all that fast, but he could even play center field, which currently could even happen because Brian Reynolds may be moving to a corner outfield spot. And Jack Suwinski just absolutely crushes righties, like I said. But also, like I said again, his hitting against lefties is just absolutely atrocious and very rarely hits against them. And that's why he's at number 12, because if he was more versatile and could hit against righties and lefties, he could easily be higher, but he's just not. At number 11, I have Josh Lowe of the Rays. He had a really solid season last year and was probably, even for the first time in his career, better than his brother Nate Lowe of the Rangers. Josh like I said, had a really good season last year, and his defense has always been good in his career, but this was his first best hitting season in the major leagues, and I think he will continue to do that in the years coming. Even though he's only done it one time, he looked really solid last year, and he's still extremely young, and he will continue to build on a great season, in my opinion. Beginning the top 10, I have Lane Thomas of the Nationals. He looked like he was going to have a really good year last year, but near the end of the season, he kind of fell off a little bit, which is to be expected because the Nationals got rid of Jeimer Candelario, which officially gave him absolutely no lineup security at all. He was the only guy that teams had to face to not be scared of him hitting a home run, and so they just attacked him a lot and just let him take walks or just ground out because he was the only guy on the Nationals team who could do anything. So I don't really think that's really all that his fault, and I personally think he's one of the most underrated players in all of the league. At number 9, I have Seiya Suzuki from my Chicago Cubs. He started off the season kind of alright, and then in the middle of the summer, he just started doing absolutely awful. And as a Cubs fan, I know this whole story. So David Ross gave him a few days off in mid-August, and after that, he just absolutely lit like a flame. He was absolutely amazing for the rest of that time and was a big part of the Cubs once again doing really good down the stretch. And he continued doing great all season long, which is the thing I can't say about the Cubs is they completely collapsed at the end of the year. But Seiya Suzuki was not the reason why that happened, and he was hitting really well for them in the last few months. And he can just piece it up for a full season. He could find himself even higher than 9, and even 9 right now might be a little bit high for him, but I am a biased Cubs fan, and I will admit that. At number 8, I have free agent Teoscar Hernandez. He just left the Mariners after not accepting the qualifying offer, which actually slightly surprised me because I did think he would take the one-year deal worth almost $22 million. But like I said, he ended up declining it. There was a lot of rumors about him early in the offseason that it was pretty much locked in he was going to the Dodgers, but they have now signed a lot of other guys, but we'll probably just go out and sign him anyway. You've probably seen my video that I made yesterday about the Dodgers just getting every single free agent, and they probably just have signed even more by now. They've probably traded for Aaron Judge and Raul Acuna, and they probably just absolutely scammed him and just offered them $1 billion for him, and I would not even be surprised because the Dodgers are pretty much just pressing the cheat button now, and it's completely unfair what they're doing. And they'll probably, like I said, just get him too and just make their team even better. And also, like I said, wouldn't even be shocked. But anyway, this isn't about the Dodgers. This is about Teoscar Hernandez. He had a really solid season. Like I said in the last video about J-Rod, his stats are very cushioned by the last few months where the Mariners and him and J-Rod really heated up. But the rest of the season, he didn't really look all that great. But he still has a great track record, and that's why he's at number 8. At number 7, I have Anthony Santander of the Orioles. He looked really good last year, and he's continued to just be really above average for the Orioles. His defense in the outfield really isn't all that great, but his hitting has just been consistently very, very good for them, and he's just been keeping that up for a while now. Last year was one of the best seasons of his career, and I'm sure that he'll even continue that and probably do even better in 2024 on an Orioles team that is doing very good. At number 6, I have Adolis Garcia. This is absolutely crazy because if Adolis Garcia played any other position with defense as good as this, he would not be at number 6. But currently, right field, even without Mookie Betts, is the most loaded position in baseball. And that's why Adolis Garcia, even with his great bat, clutch, and defense, is way down at number 6. He was great on defense for the Rangers last year, and even though a late season injury slightly sidelined him, he still was one of the best RBI hitters in all of the American League and had a ton of home runs too. He's kind of like Luis Robert to me, as in the fact that he doesn't really have a great average but does everything else the same. Also, he could be Cuban, but I'm pretty sure he's from the Dominican Republic, so that's completely a lie. But anyway, Adolis Garcia is still a really solid player. Also, correction, I was correct. Adolis Garcia is in fact Cuban. At number 5, I have Kyle Tucker from the Astros. He's just a really solid hitter, and even though he looked absolutely atrocious in the playoffs last season, which I cannot say the same about Adolis Garcia, as he was electric for the Rangers in the playoffs last year. He's been a great hitter for longer than Adolis Garcia has, and it's kind of my main comparison here, even though they're very different players. They're in the same division, and they're big rivals now after the Rangers and Astros rivalry has clearly boiled over after they played each other in the championship series. They've had multiple mid-game brawls. That's probably the biggest rivalry in baseball right now, and I love watching it because they both have absolutely star-studded rosters, and it's amazing to watch, and they have two of the best right fielders in baseball, in Kyle Tucker and Adolis Garcia. But based on how I have them ranked on this list, obviously, I think Kyle Tucker is better. At number 4, I have Fernando Tatis Jr. of the Padres. Coming off of a motorcycle incident and a PED suspension and missing a full MLB season, he did not disappoint anybody. He missed about the first 25 games of the season, just like John Morant in the NBA. That's a complete not on topic whatsoever, but anyway, that's just what I thought of. And also, they're kind of similar because they have a lot of off-field things. But anyway, he's a great player for the Padres. He's still hitting amazing. His average was not very good last year, but his home runs were still amazing. And the main thing that I would like to highlight is his defense. This was his very first year moving to right field after the Padres signed Xander Bogaerts, and I am shocked at how well he played. He was absolutely amazing in right field. He wasn't great at the beginning, but he started making some great plays, and he still has one of the best arms in baseball from right field. And even though I don't personally think he deserved it, in his first year playing the new position, he won the Platinum Glove. I personally think, and this may be biased, but I don't even think it is, I personally think that Dansby Swanson of the Cubs should have won it, coming off of a great defensive season, but Obviously, Fernando Tatis Jr. was also a great defender, and he's also a great hitter, and if he can raise that average, he could easily pass up the number 3 guy, and even though the number 3 guy is very young, that is Corbin Carroll. He's coming off of a World Series appearance. The main problem with him that is kind of the opposite to Tatis is he has no arm in the outfield. His defense is still pretty solid, and his bat is amazing, although versus left-handed pitchers, he's just not as great as he is against righties, which is obviously pretty common in the left-handed hitters. His defense, like I said, though, could definitely use a little bit of work, and that could maybe get him to number 2, but I don't really see it because 1 and 2 are just amazing players. Corbin Carroll, though, like I said, is on a D-backs team that just made the playoffs, and they're going to continue to just progress, and they're just going to get better and better, and I'm sure that they could make the World Series next year, but as I've already mentioned in this video, the Dodgers, with their powerhouse, the Diamondbacks probably won't. And number 2, I have Aaron Judge from the Yankees. He's coming off of a season where he was very much injury-prone and barely even played 100 games, but still managed to hit 37 home runs because, of course, he did. He was on pace to get almost another 60 home runs, which would have been wild after hitting 62 and winning the MVP over Shohei, which I didn't even know was possible. But anyway, Aaron Judge, one of the best right fielders in baseball. It's rumored that he could be moving to center field with Juan Soto trade and having him play right instead. But I do think that Aaron Judge will stick it in right field, in my opinion. He's very tall and could honestly just reach over the Yankees' very short right field wall and just rob home runs super easily, which he's done in the past to people like Zach Campbell, which you'll probably see a picture on the screen just now. And he's just an absolutely massive human being, and he absolutely hits tanks. His defense is also really solid with a great arm, but I just physically cannot rank him over number 1, and that is Ronald Acuna Jr. I mean, I could read the stats to you all day, but I don't think you would really like that. First ever 40-70 season, 40-60 season, 40-50 season, 30-60 season, 30-50 season. It's just absolutely wild what he just did last year. Probably the best season in Major League Baseball history. Yep, I'll say it, probably the best. Even though his defense isn't even that good, one of the worst defensive right fielders that is at the top of this list here. But his hitting is just so unbelievably good, and he brings so much value to an offense. It's just absolutely insane. People thought that he wouldn't really be that good because he tore his ACL in the 2021 season, and in 2022 he didn't look great and was obviously behind Aaron Judge on a lot of right fielder lists, but he has completely erased that now. He is number 1 far and away, and you may see in a few days. Is he number 1 in the top 50 players in Major League Baseball? You'll have to wait until Christmas, and even though it is Christmas and you should spend time with your family, watch that video on the 26th instead. But anyway, I'll see you tomorrow on Christmas Eve when I rank the DHs, and like I said, on Christmas I will be ranking my top 50 players. I hope you're enjoying this series, and like I said at the beginning, thank you all so very much. I'll see you next time on Talking About Baseball.